Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now in the last video we were introduced to group policy and what we're able to automate with it. We were able to configure users' password policies, we were able to map a network drive, and we were able to restrict control panel settings. We also learned how to properly scope our group policies so we don't apply them to everyone. Now in this video I would like to talk about the basic group policy tasks like reordering group policy, removing links, blocking inheritance, and enforcing GPOs. But more importantly, how we can extend the capabilities of GPOs using ADMX files and scripting. So let's dive in. Now, in the last video, we were introduced to group policies and what we can do with them. We can automate certain tasks, we can install software, and we can map network drives to make our lives as administrators much easier. Now, because we've created all of these policies, we know exactly what they do. But let's say, for example, you're new to the company and you're in charge of the infrastructure. How will you know what each of these policies do, especially if they're not very descriptive? And even if they are descriptive, you'll still want to double check just to see what they do. Well, back in DC01, I'll open up my group policy management console. I'll expand out a few of our organizational units. Then I'll click on restrict control panel group policy. And I'll click on the settings tab and we see it's currently generating a report. And we also get this Internet Explorer error message. Basically, because group policy uses some parts of Internet Explorer to render the pages, you will see this error message. Now you could close this out and the settings page will load, but what I like to do is add this link to our trusted sites so we don't have to see this each time we review our GPOs. So what I would do is I will click on add, then I will add this website to our trusted sites, then I'll close out of this. And then in our settings page, I'll just hit show all. And this is where we can view all of the settings pertaining to our group policies. We can see the details where the group policy is linked, the security filtering, the delegation, and of course the configuration. We can see this policy is inside of user configurations, then policies, then administrative templates, and then the policy we're applying. And if we click on another GPO, for example, I could click on the Firefox GPO, and we can see similar information, we can see who it's assigned to, and we can see the software installation policy as well. So this is a very helpful feature when you're dealing with group policies, especially if you're new to an infrastructure and you really need to map out what each policy does and if they're still needed. We can also change the order of our GPOs. So I can click on an organizational unit, for example, the computers OU, and then I could change the order of the Chrome and Firefox GPO. The idea here is whichever GPO is higher on the link order, that GPO will be applied first. In this case, Chrome will be installed before Firefox. Also, depending on where you right-click on a GPO, you can have different options. For example, if I were to right-click on the Install Chrome GPO that is linked to the computers OU, you can see the options here are a bit limited. But if I were to click on the same GPO under the Group Policy Object OU, we get some different options. You can also disable your GPOs if you're no longer using them or if you're just troubleshooting some issues with them. You can right-click on your GPO, go to GPO status, and here you can disable your user configuration settings or your computer configuration settings. I will disable all settings, and now Google Chrome will no longer be installed automatically for computers. And you might also notice that the paper icon next to the GPO is currently a bit transparent, and that's how you know that the GPO has been disabled. You can disable the link for the OU by right-clicking and unchecking the option for link enable. Disabling the link essentially means you're no longer applying the GPO to the organizational unit. It's similar to disabling a GPO, but you can have a GPO applied to multiple OUs, and you can disable it for one OU if needed. You can also delete a link to an OU. Now, this does not delete the GPO, but simply removes the link that is assigned to that OU. As you can see, I've deleted the Chrome install GPO link, but the GPO still exists, and I can also relink it. Next, I'll click on the computers OU, and I'll go to the Group Policy Inheritance tab, and we can see the Firefox install and Chrome install GPOs are here, but we also see the restrict control panel and the default domain policy here as well. Because Active Directory follows a hierarchical structure, if a GPO is assigned to an OU, in this example, restrict control panel is directly linked to the PRB-head office OU, to which the computers, groups, and users OU are also beneath. So in this case, the restrict control panel GPO will also be applied to all three OUs below it. Same with the default domain policy, because this one sits at the highest level directly under the PRB investments.local domain. All OUs below this will be processing this GPO. You can also block the inheritance of a GPO. So I can right-click on my computers OU and then select block inheritance. And now we can see that the restrict control panel and the default domain policy GPOs are no longer linked to this OU. And we get a blue exclamation mark icon letting us know that this option has been turned on. But I can also right-click on the default domain policy and I can enforce it. And enforcing the GPO will override the block inheritance option. So the default domain policy will be linked and it will be the first GPO to also be applied. Now, so far the GPOs that we've been applying are what we will refer to as native settings, meaning these settings come with our group policy management and they do a great job of managing our Windows-based computers in a domain. However, you can also extend the capabilities of group policies with ADMX files. For example, we want to restrict certain settings on Google Chrome. So Bruce Clark would like us to block Facebook.com and Instagram.com and also set copilot.microsoft as our default webpage. To do this, I will create a new GPO. And to do this, I will create a new GPO. And this time, I'm going to right-click directly on the user's OU and choose the option to create a new GPO and link it here. And I will name the GPO Chrome URL block and set homepage. And we'll edit the GPO. We'll navigate to user configuration, policies, then administrative templates. And currently, we don't have any settings for Google Chrome because it's not a Microsoft product. But if you recall, when we downloaded the Google Chrome.msi file, there were other folders in there as well. So we'll right-click on the Administrative Templates folder, and then we'll select Add or Remove Templates, and then we'll click on Add, navigate to my Downloads folder. Then inside of the Google Chrome bundle folder, I will go into the Configuration folder, then I will go inside of the ADM folder, and then here we have folders with different languages. And because I use en-us, I'll go into that folder. I'll select the chrome.adm file and open that. And then we'll click on close. And now we have an option for classic administrative templates. And inside of that, we have two Google Chrome folders. And one of these options have settings that users can override, but I will select the other one. And inside of this folder, we can see different configurations that we can use to manage Google Chrome. I'll start this, and then I'll look for the block access to a list of URLs. Then I'll open this up. And it's very similar to how we apply our other GPO settings. In the help section, if you read through, it tells you what a GPO does, and it also gives you a link to a website, which I will visit now. And here we can see some examples of the different formats we can use to block certain URLs in Chrome. And I'll head back over to my GPO config. I'll enable the GPO. And the websites that I will type is going to be https://www.facebook.com and https://www.instagram.com, and then I will apply these settings. I'll go back, and the next setting that I want to enable is going to be for our homepage or for our first URL. And in our list of configurations, I'll go into the Start, Homepage, and New Tab folder. And here I will click on the Configure, New Tab, and Page URL. I will enable this config, and for the new page URL, I will enter https://www.copilot.microsoft.com, and then I will hit apply, and then I will save my changes. Then after that, I will head over to Bruce Clark PC, and first I'll just open up Chrome. The first tab we get is the default Google page, and next I'll try to browse to facebook.com and instagram.com, and we can see these both work. Next, I'll open up CMD. And I'll run the command gp update/force. Then I'll close and reopen Google Chrome. And we can see that the first tab, it does load the Copilot portal. And if I try to access facebook.com and instagram.com, we can see that these are both blocked. So our GPO was successful. Next, let's do the same thing for Firefox. Back over in DC01, I'll reopen my web browser. And I'll download the ADMX files for Firefox. I'll go to Google, and I'll search for Firefox ADMX file download. And I'll click on the first link. Then I'll click on the link that brings me to the GitHub site, where I can download the policy template zip file. And once that is done, I will head over to my Downloads folder, and I'll extract the policy template zip file. Then back in our Group Policy Management console, I'll create a new GPO called Firefox URL block and set homepage. Then I'll edit the GPO. I'll navigate to User Configuration, Policies, then Administrative Templates. Now notice that we don't see that Google configuration that we added earlier, and that's because when you add these ADM files directly inside of a GPO, it will only be available within that GPO that you're configuring. If you want to use the configurations, you will have to re-add it for other GPOs, which isn't really a hard thing to do because it's pretty easy. You just add the ADM files, but there is an easier way to do this. So what I'll do is I'll snap my Downloads folder to the side, and I'll open up a new File Explorer window, and I'll navigate to C. then the Windows folder, and then policy definitions. And this folder contains all of the ADMX configuration that's available to us. So first, I'll head over to my Google Chrome bundle folder, then I'll go into the configuration folder, and then inside of the ADMX folder, I will copy the chrome.admx file and paste it in the policy definition folder. And I'll do the same thing for Firefox. I'll go into the policy template folder, then Windows, and I'll copy the firefox.admx file into the policy definition folder. Afterwards, I'll head into the en-us language folder. I'll copy the firefox.adml file, and inside of the policy definition folder, there is another folder called en-us, and I'll paste my ADML file for Firefox and for Google Chrome inside of here. Just ensure when you're pasting these files, the ones that ends with .adml, these ones need to go into the en-us folder because this is related to the language, and the one that ends in .admx file, these ones go into the policy definition folder as it's related to the configuration. And with that done, I'll edit the Firefox URL block GPO, and back in user configuration, policies, and administrative templates, I can now see the Firefox and Google Chrome folders here. So going forward, these configurations will be available to us in the event that we need to add restrictions or settings for Google Chrome or Firefox. Next, I'll head into the Firefox folder, and I'll find the configuration that we're going to need to block the websites, and here it is. I will enable this setting, and the websites that I'm going to block is going to be https://www.facebook.com/ and https://www.instagram.com/. I find with Firefox configuration, it likes it when the URL ends with the /, so that's why I've added these here. Once that is done, I'll apply my changes. Then I'll head into the homepage folder, and I'll enable the URL for homepage configuration. And the URL I will enter is going to be https://copilot.microsoft.com, and I'll apply and save the changes here too. And then back over on bClark PC, I'll just open up Firefox to make sure that the homepage is not set, which it is not, and Instagram and Facebook isn't blocked either. So what we will do next is I will close this browser. I'll open up CMD, and I'll run a GP update /force. And when I reopen Firefox, our homepage is now the Copilot portal, which is great. And when I try to open Facebook and Instagram.com, these are both blocked. So you can see how we're able to extend the capabilities of group policy using .admx files. Many vendors provide these files to help administrators have an easier time to manage their infrastructure and the software that they provide to users. Now, besides ADMX files and the default GPO settings, sometimes you might run into a situation where you need to automate something, but your default settings can't help you with that. In these cases, we rely on scripting. For example, we've already created a GPO that helped us to map a network drive, which is great. However, let's say that we need to map a network drive using a different credential. The GPO settings does not give us this option, but we can create a batch file that can help us configure this. Back over on DC01, I'll open up my File Explorer, and I'll go to my C drive, and in my temp folder, I'll create a new text file. And then I'll edit this text, and then I'll add @echo off, which just suppresses the display of the command lines in a console window while the script runs. And below that, I'll add netuse, which is the command that we use to map drives. We'll select the drive letter Y, /, space, //fs-01 /netshare-fs1, which is the file share on fs1. And then we'll do a /, the user, we'll add :, and then the user we want to use. In this case, it's PRB admin. Then we'll do a space, and then the password for the user is active 2023 with the exclamation mark at the end. We'll do a space, and then a /, and then we'll do persistent : yes. Then I'll click on File, then Save As. I'll change the save type as to be all files. And then the file name will be mapdrive.bat, and then I'll save it. Now, if you don't change the file type and you just leave it as a text document, it's going to save the file as mapdrive.bat.txt, which isn't a batch file, it's just a txt document, so ensure that you change it to be all files. And then I'll save this. Then back in my Group Policy Management console, I'll right-click on my user's OU, and I'll create a new GPO, and I'll link it here. We'll name it Y:drive map, and then I'll edit the new GPO. I'll go into user configuration, then policies, then Windows settings, then scripts, and then we'll click on log on, and then I will hit add. Now, when you're running batch scripts, the location of the scripts is important. So back in File Explorer, I'll go into my temp folder and I'll copy my map drive.batch file, and then I'll navigate to // prb_investments.local, and then we'll go into the sysvol folder, and then we'll go back into prb_investments.local, and then in the scripts folder here, I will paste my batch file here. Then back in my GPU configuration, I'll add a file. For the script name, I'll hit browse, navigate to that same location, / prb_investments.local, /sysvol, prb_investments.local, /script, and then select the map drive.batch file. Then I'll hit apply and save. Then I'll head over to bclark PC and I'll do another GPU update. And in File Explorer, we can see that it doesn't work. And sometimes for some GPOs, in this case this batch file, it's better to log out and log back in. Because we're using different credentials to map a drive, sometimes this can confuse Windows. So it's better to sign out, which we'll do. We'll sign out and we'll sign back in. And now once we're back in, we'll go into File Explorer and we can see that the Y drive is now mapped. And if I were to go into the netshare folder, you can see that I'm able to view files that Bruce Clark does not have access to. And that's because we mapped this drive using the PRB admin privilege. And this account is a domain admin, so it has access to things that Bruce Clark does not have access to. But this only applies to this folder specifically because that's what we use that privilege for. Now, batch scripts are great for certain configurations on your systems. However, for modern scripting and system automations, we use PowerShell. PowerShell is the standard method of automating your systems. So for this scenario, let's say, for example, we just created a new VPN server and we need to push out the VPN configuration to all of our systems. Now, this settings is available in native group policy. However, with Windows 11 becoming the new standard for client machines, there are a few features that you're not able to do in native group policy. So in this situation, PowerShell will be better. So I'll head over to DC01, then I'll open up PowerShell ISE, and I'll create the following script. First, I'll create a variable named VPN name, and I will assign it the value PRB VPN in quotes. Then I'll add another variable called server address, and the value for this will be vpn.prbinvestments.local, and I'll also put this in quotes. And for the command, this will be add-VPN connection -name. It's going to be VPN name -server address, which will be server address. Then I'll add tunnel type, which will be SSTP. The encryption level is going to be required, and we'll add the force parameter here. I'll save this. And I'll save this in our //fso1 /ishare /software location. And I will name this script add-VPN and then hit save. And back in my group policy management console, I will create a new GPO, and then I will create a new GPO in my users OU named add company VPN. Then I will edit my new GPO. I will go into user configuration, policies, Windows settings, and scripts, and I will create a logon script. I will select the PowerShell tab, and I'll set the script to run Windows PowerShell scripts first. Then I will click add. I will navigate to //fs-01 ishare and then software, and here I will open the add-vpn.ps1 file. Then I will click on add and then OK. Then back over on bclark PC, we'll check our network settings, and we can see that we don't have any other network connections beside my Ethernet connection. Then we'll do a GPU update force. And we don't see the VPN connection yet, so I will do a quick reboot. And once it is back online, I will sign in, and then I will check my VPN settings once more. And here we can see our PRB VPN has been added. And we can look through the configuration of this VPN and ensure that it matches what's in the PowerShell script. We see our server name is correct, and we see the type of VPN is SSTP, which is also correct. So that is it for this video. I hope you learned a few tricks as to how you can extend your use of group policies, whether it's using ADMX files or if you're using scripting. Although we've gone through quite a bit of GPO settings, there are still a lot more that we haven't touched as yet. However, I'm sure as we go through this journey, we'll be using group policies for other things that we need to automate. I hope you found this video helpful, and please leave a comment if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Thank you for watching.